Welcome to the 89th episode of The Atlas Society Asks. My name is Jennifer Anju Grossman. My friends call me Jag. I'm the CEO of the Atlas Society. We are the leading nonprofit introducing the ideas of Ayn Rand to young people in fun, creative ways, like our animated videos and graphic novels. Today, we are joined by Amjad Masad. Before I even get into introducing Amjad, I want to remind all of you that are watching us on Zoom, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you are, we want to hear from you. So use the comment section and shoot us some questions. Our guest today, Amjad Masad, landed in America about a decade ago with nothing but credit card debt, and with hard work and risk-taking and ambition, he became one of the country's youngest and most successful tech entrepreneurs. After working at engineering roles at Facebook and Yahoo, then helping launch Code Academy, in 2016, he founded Replit, an online coding environment designed to make coding more fun, approachable, and social, kind of like what we try to do here at the Atlas Society. While he's widely respected in Silicon Valley and the tech community, he broke into the national consciousness last month when he authored a thread on Twitter on 10 things I love about this country, which got picked up in various outlets, and including a beautiful op-ed by Peggy Noonan. We'll put those links in the comment section. Amjad, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Beautiful introduction. I appreciate it.
So first, I was interested to learn that you were born in and grew up in Jordan, but you can correct me because I know your family moved around a little bit. I actually spent some time there doing research for my Harvard thesis on the Hashemite dynasty. So would love to hear a bit about your backstory before coming to the United States.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, my parents, I come from, I guess, multiple generation of immigrants. My father is a Palestinian immigrant, first to Syria. My father was born in Syria and then moved to Amman when Amman was kind of just becoming like a major city in the region. And my mom's family are Algerian, and they kind of fled the Algerian-French War, went to Syria, and then from Syria again to Amman. My dad and my mom met in Amman, and my brothers and I were born and raised in Amman, Jordan. My father is an engineer. My mom is sort of more of a kind of a liberal arts type. I think she studied psychology. She always kind of made us read poems and draw and do art. And my father always pushed us to do kind of math and physics. And we had sort of little means, and but my parents always they had this value of they always valued education, and they went into debt to give us a great education. My father was working in government in Jordan. He started in the Amman in the city of Amman as an engineer, as a civil engineer, and he found it hard at first because it's hard as a Palestinian to kind of really make it in government in Jordan. But it was beautiful watching him kind of fight and try to do the best for the country, and kind of as an immigrant really adopt a new country and try to contribute the most. And kind of I carried that with me today as I do the same thing in the United States. But my father got us a computer when we were very young. Again, sort of went into debt for that. It was way above his means, but he just saw something in computers. That was 1993, and we were the first in our neighborhood, even in our, like, if of anyone I know, that we had a computer. And I remember just one of my earliest memory memories was just standing behind my father's shoulder as he was learning how to use the computer. He was using DOS, he was entering the commands. And like, I remember what was going through my head was that, wow, this is a machine that can talk to you, and that you can like have almost a conversation with. And I just sort of like started making mental notes of like what my father and his friends were doing on the computer. And then when they would leave, I'd wake up at night, get up from bed, go to the computer, and then mess around with it and start typing commands. And eventually I got caught, but my father was so impressed with my abilities with the computer that came sort of naturally to me. And they just like let me mess with it. I learned a bit of programming. One of the interesting thing about computers in the 90s and 80s was, and before that, was that you had to learn some programming in order to use computers. Unlike today, where sort of, Silicon Valley does the programming for you, and like everyone is a consumer of computers, as opposed to being able to manipulate the software and the data yourself. And maybe we'll get back to that once I talk about my journey in business and entrepreneurship. I started my first software business when I was 15 years old. I sold software to internet cafes in Jordan, which was becoming a big trend. I sold like management software, and I had contracts to fix their computers. I was on call the whole time, and I kind of invested in a pager so that they can reach me. There were no cellular phones at the time in Jordan. And so I would run away from class in order to go fix my software, which often broke. I made a lot of money as a kid. When McDonald's first came to Jordan, I took my entire class to eat at McDonald's. And I was just like bawling for a 15 years old kid. And yeah, and that's how I caught the entrepreneurship bug. It just felt like software and computers were this like thing that could give you superpowers, and was really inspired by that. I went throughout college. I worked in IT. I sort of stopped doing software for a while. I had this theory that maybe AI will be able to automate software. That theory turned out to be kind of dumb, because software is the last thing that AI will automate. Before everything else is automated. So I went back to software, and I had this vision in my head that software was sort of like the highest leverage thing since the dawn of humanity. And like, you can sort of just think of things. It's kind of, you can think of things, and with little resources, turn it into reality, turn it into something that affects people's lives. And so I made it my life's mission to make software creation more accessible. And I wrote a sort of a breakthrough piece of software that we open sourced to make programming more accessible in a web browser. Traditionally, you'd have to download a lot of software in order to start programming. And so I try to do to software what Google Docs did to Microsoft Word. Just put it online, make it collaborative, make it easy to share. It was a lot harder than just prose, because you're dealing with code. But that got me a lot of press and kind of fame in the United States. People were talking about our technology and using it, and talking about it in conferences. So I got a job offer from Code Academy as the founding engineer. And they got me an O1 visa to go to the United States. I mean, the story behind the credit card debt was that I saved up a lot of money in order to go to the United States, to buy the ticket and go there and get situated. In the airport, they looked at my visa. They saw the O1 visa. They did not know what an O1 visa is. They never seen it before from a Jordanian, an alien of extraordinary ability. That's what it's called. And they made me buy a ticket back. And they basically took all my cash from me, and I had to put some on my credit card. So by the time I landed in America, I really had very little money. I kind of struggled with that a little bit. But like the startup started taking off, eventually I left that company. Today, Code Academy kind of powers tens of millions of people learning how to code. They just had a big exit. They were acquired for $500 million, and after that, I went to work for Facebook a little bit before in 2016, kind of starting my own business, which is Replit.
So when you came to the United States, had you been here before? Was it kind of a culture shock at all, because you have zero accent?
Yeah. So the accent is something I actually worked on. I wanted to fit in. I didn't want to. There's nothing wrong with an accent, obviously, but yeah, I just wanted to fit in. I wanted to be an American. As us Jordanians, we're fascinated by American culture. When we were growing up, we listened to rap music. We dressed like Americans. We ate McDonald's, and we grew up with American culture. And so, in a lot of ways, it wasn't a culture shock. Maybe California was because I landed in New York. Maybe California was a little bit more of a culture shock because the culture here is pretty different. Like California, like New Yorkers are a lot more confrontational and and more similar to Arabs, I guess. But in California, there's this niceness and sometimes fake niceness that's hard to really parse. So that was a bit hard, but other than that, I was pretty well acclimated.
So tell us about Replit. How is it different than Code Academy? This is a philosophy audience. Hopefully we have some of your fans who are watching as well. But for our core base, who are relatively tech non-savvy, what's your product, and who are your customers or consumers? What's the business model?
Yeah, for sure. So Code Academy's business model was education. You paid us to teach you how to code, and we had some software content that we sold. At Code Academy, I felt like we stopped short of the potential, because I felt like the potential was to not only give you the training wheels, but actually give you the bike itself, right? So I felt like there's an opportunity to make coding fun, accessible, but also give people the tools in order to build monetized software. And I know the Atlas Society is about liberty, freedom, capitalism, and all of that. And these ideas are embedded in Replit because we want people. And so going back to my story about thinking of software as this huge leverage, this great equalizer, it's the best thing. It's the best thing in a long time for entrepreneurship, but it's not as accessible as it could be. And we could get a lot more entrepreneurs building software. And I think it's much better to have this like decentralized form of entrepreneurship as opposed to, Silicon Valley sort of building software for everyone. And we know the negative effects of that. And so with Replit, we want to give people tools to learn how to code, but also tools to build and ship software. And so we have people going from their first line of code to their first app to their first dollar, right? And we have people taking the tools to their jobs. We have people starting startups on our platform. And so we really want to blur the distinction between learning the craft and putting it to use.
All right, well, we're going to get into your famous Twitter thread. I want to remind everybody who is watching, and hopefully we have some international viewers, because I know that your reputation has grown internationally, and I do want to talk about all of the ways in which Replit is helping people in Venezuela and other countries which also don't really have reliable internet connections to just start to get a leg up on that ladder of economic opportunity. But as I mentioned, on December 28th of last year, you posted a thread to Twitter, which again, we're going to post into the comment section, which started off, I landed in the United States 10 years ago with nothing but credit card debt. After one startup exit, one big tech job, one unicorn, I genuinely believe that it wouldn't have been possible anywhere in the world, anywhere else in the world. Here are 10 things I love about this country. So what inspired you? Did you have any premonition that it would have so much impact? And was there a last straw? Was it sort of like, oh, this is what's on my mind? Is it something that I've been building for a while?
Yeah, sort of, when I have this tradition of towards the end of the year, I typically go in this like more reflective mode. Like, what have I done this year? What is our life like? What changed? My wife is a big part of my story. I met her at work in Jordan. We get married, and she is my co-founder at Replit. She's a designer, and so we were talking, Haya and I, at lunch, and we were just like talking about, just reflecting. And the main thing on our mind was that, okay, we've been 10 years almost to the day in the United States. What have we been able to achieve? And we talked a lot about that, the startups, the career achievements, the financial achievements, and all of that. And really felt a sense of gratitude towards this country. And also like a sense of like, how can we give back? There are a lot of things that I don't like the trends of that are happening. And I felt like, let me highlight the things that I really love about this country, what I think is really special, and maybe hold up a mirror to Americans just to see what's great about them, about the culture and about the country. And maybe we can start a discussion around that. And so that kind of was brewing, and then it just came out of me. Like, I started writing it, and I guess it's been brewing in my head for so long, and it was so easy to get it out. Like, I had just so much to say and so much love to give, and gratitude. And that was the impetus for the thread.
It's interesting that you mentioned that it was kind of gratitude that moved you. That actually is a big theme of ours at the Atlas Society. It's not necessarily a core tenet of objectivism, but looking at that value and that attitude and that feeling from an objectivist lens, it's quite empowering. You're not coming from a place of want or scarcity, and anyone can feel grateful, for what
Yes.
they have, even if it's very little. And we also think it's, you talked about some of these trends, and some of the trends that we're concerned about are things like envy. We call it the socially transmitted disease of envy. Which is very disempowering. It's just focused on what other people have, and rather than focusing on yourself. Vices like victimhood, which now it's almost like a Olympics of victimhood. Whoever can claim to be the more victimized, has the moral superiority. And resentment and gratitude really does almost inoculate you to that. So that's really beautiful. So the response, were you surprised by just the magnitude of it, or what did you think you were going to get? What did you get?
Well, first, just to comment on this idea of gratitude and its connection to self-reliance and it's the opposite of victimhood, and it's a very astute observation. I haven't thought about it that way, but it's absolutely true, because how can you be envious if you're actually thankful, right? If you're counting your blessings, like how are you, like you can't focus on your shortcomings or your misgivings, or you're just like focused on how good things are and how you could make things better. And that's the kind of mindset that I really like to have.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think of like, even when things are going bad, and things have gone bad in my life, this house burned down. This is the house that I rebuilt. But, in kind of taking on a big task, if you are just feeling like so down about yourself, so down about, your situation, you feel like a victim, then it's really hard to motivate yourself and just kind of figure out, like, looking around, what do I have? How do I make the situation better? And sort of a gratitude focus is like, okay, no, I got my family, got my friends, I've got my mind, I've got my values, I have my philosophy.
Right.
This is what I'm going to use. Thank goodness I have these tools.
Yeah, exactly. For the response, like I expected to get a fair amount of traction on the thread, but what transpired was way more than I expected. Getting printed in the Wall Street Journal, I think featured in The Hill, a bunch of local newspapers, and then trending on Twitter, Facebook, a bunch of other places. That was, I did not expect that. I expected within my network to get a fair amount of positive feedback, and I expected to get some pushback because again, there was, I try to highlight the really positive things, and there are some people who are just so caught up with the negative things that they will get mad if you show a lot of optimism. And I actually like to show a lot of optimism and really don't care if that really rubs you the wrong way. Like, you can just, you just piss off. Like, I don't really care. Like, we really should be proud of our optimism, and we should really be proud of our nation and proud of our country and proud of what makes us great. And so I want to, so that was one thing on my mind. In terms of the response, immigrants, other American immigrants, had the most positive response, like quote tweets, replies, people saying, I'm coming from a place where I faced so much discrimination in America.
Racism, yeah.
And America was the first place I've been able to really live life without that kind of fear looming over my head. Be able to, like a lot of entrepreneurs shared what I talked about. It was also surprising that, given the division in the country, that both left-leaning and right-leaning people enjoyed the thread. Like one example is like Chris Hayes followed me and Bill Kristol, and they cannot be more diametrically opposed. And that was good. Like it was great to see that there's that I've been able to appeal to the entire spectrum of political ideology in the United States. The biggest pushback was on infrastructure. I said this thing, which is like, I didn't know it was like a triggering word, infrastructure, but it is for a lot of people. A lot of people like kind of like discounted the whole thread or thought it was fiction because I said America has good infrastructure and I said Americans take care of their public spaces, and I stand by it. And even Peggy, who loved the thread when we were talking, she even pushed back on that. And I said, look, no, I'm gonna stand my ground. I really believe in what I said. You have to understand, like, my perspective. Like I am here in Palo Alto. I take my kid outside to the park, and it's like it's
Evan.
epic. It's wonderful. It's squirrels and it's dogs and it's people and it's clean, and that to me is fantastic. It's fascinating. I realize that not all of America is like that, especially places where ideologues have really taken over, like San Francisco.
Oh
You
my
see,
God.
you
Yeah.
see, you see these places getting destroyed, but I don't feel like that's inherently American. I feel like that's anti-American in a lot of ways, and this is like a lot of this are like blips, and I hope we kind of correct away from these things. I know it's getting hard to believe that California could turn things around, but hopefully we can. But even in New York, when I came, like just the subway is a fascinating thing. Like it's really, and I know Americans will look at Japan and other places and say like, you know, we suck, and that's great. That's a great thing about America is like we want to improve. But from my baseline, as you've probably seen in Jordan, like nothing runs on time. You know, everything's like, you know, public transport is super dirty, unsafe, and all of that. New York was the opposite of that. And from my point of view, I think American infrastructure is good, and I really hope we can make it even better. Like when I say something is good, a lot of people they feel like, you know, it's being complacent. I'm not being complacent. I'm just recognizing that this is something that's that I feel is great and I'm grateful for. And so that was the biggest pushback. And of course, there are people who want to really focus on the negative things, and it wasn't like a huge number of them, but you know, some people like sort of hated the fact that I didn't talk about discrimination, or I didn't talk about any of their pets issues. And yeah, there is so much to talk about in terms of what we can do better. And I do believe we can do better on giving more equal access to more people. And I'm working on that. Like that's literally our job at Replit is to provide equal opportunity for everyone. But by having gratitude, I really do not mean that we should not also be working on the things we could get better at.
Really interesting. And I wonder with the infrastructure, because I wouldn't have thought of that. I mean, I've been in Jordan, I've been, you know, overseas in places where you literally cannot drive on the roads. I mean,
Right.
just so completely, it's unbelievably messed up. So compared to that, it's pretty darn good. But maybe because there was the infrastructure bill and the Build Back Better, and so
right.
you know, you were being seen to say, hey, you know, the infrastructure is pretty good, and that didn't, you know, kind of fit the political narrative. So it's a possibility.
I sort of I stumbled on a landmine, I guess, that I did not know. And I know like, you know, there was this debate about what is infrastructure and what is not, and there was like a ton of things that oh, okay, I guess this word is like is sort of is a trigger word right now. So
as so many are, as so many appear to be. So all right, we have another half an hour, so I do want to encourage people to jump in with questions, but I still have a few of my own. So let's go through some of the items that you had mentioned in your list. The first one on your list was the work ethic. And by the way, I just want to mention for our viewers, one of the reasons this list really fascinated me, and I thought it would resonate with our audience, is if you are well read in Ayn Rand's, not the fiction so much, but her nonfiction, her speeches, her interviews, you will actually see a lot of resonance and similarities between Amjad's observations and hers coming from Russia, you know, and she talks about the kind of industry and the hustle. And of course, in Atlas Shrugged, the money speech, Francisco d'Anconia's money speech, talks about America as the place where we coined the phrase to make money. you know, that was not in currency, so to speak, before the United States. So I'm picking out a few things that I see a lot of overlap with the philosophy that we promote. So the first thing on your list was the work ethic. You observed in the United States, you remarked that regardless of the occupation, people want to do a bang up job, you know, whether it's sweeping the hallways, cleaning up, or whatever it is, even when nobody was looking, even when they didn't have to. And you said, you asked, why do you pour everything into doing a job when it is seemingly thankless? And it was like asking fish, what is water? So yeah, maybe some examples of that, you know, because we get questions about menial jobs, you know, and thankless jobs. But maybe there's a sense to which, you know, they're not meaningless if you find your life and supporting yourself, supporting your family, and being productive, meaningful. So what were what kind of why did this get to be the first thing on your list?
Because it's the first observation that I made. It was like, you know, just everyday things like going to the mall and seeing a janitor, you know, really put in their best in terms of cleaning and keeping everything clean, and dealing with baristas who feel something for their craft. I didn't even know that it's a craft or it's a thing. Like you're making coffee, right? It's and in my mind at least, and just like in every facet of everyday life, you see people that really care about their job. And when you complain as a customer, like nobody, like not nobody, I mean, these are generalities, but like very few service providers, waiters, companies will complain. You know, they'll really, customer satisfaction is something that is also uniquely American. You know, the idea of the customer is always right. And you see people really caring about doing a good job, and you complaining, they feel something. And, you know, I compare it to my experience back home and elsewhere where, you know, there's this low level cynicism of what's the point, you know, if I'm not, if like maybe I'm not going to get rewarded for this, like what's the point of doing a great job? Like what's the incentive? And then you compare it to America, and I think this is why I speculate that work ethic is so important here, is because you can have any profession, historically speaking, and really still have the American dream, right? Like, you know, you hear stories all the time, and we used to hear them even back home. Someone going to the United States, working in a gas station, rising up, becoming the manager of that gas station, saving money, starting their own gas station, becoming successful, starting a chain of gas stations. Like that path exists. And you can't say that about most of the world, you know, and a big part of the Western world as well. Like, you know, this is very uniquely American, that you can start at the absolute bottom and really have a path towards not only career success, but wealth and getting rich. And I think that, combined with the fact that there's some selection mechanism that's happening because it's a country of immigrants, that only the people who truly want to work hard and leave the comfort of their own country, their own home, to travel and take a big risk and go somewhere unknown, that it sort of selects for the trait of hard work. And I think you combine these two things, the idea that you can start anywhere, somewhere, and really kind of progress and build a life for yourself, and the fact that the population base already is selected to be the one that's like hardest working. And I think the third thing is the craft, the art, like, talking about the concept of a barista. I did not have it. Like everything in America could be a craft. Like you could be the best barista. You could be, you could be, the best chef. You could be a great waiter. You could, like, everything has some kind of progression and has some kind of leveling up that you could do. And I think these factors combine to give people incentives to want to work hard. And of course, there's this virtuous cycle of working hard. You see your parents working hard. You want to work hard. You see people in your community and neighborhood, and that's just absolutely great.
What you're saying reminds me of a former colleague of mine. I was an immigrant scientist from Great Britain, married to an American wife, and the company that we worked for transferred him, and his wife had been the manager of a restaurant and kind of transferring to a sort of smaller town. And I said, oh gosh, where's she ever going to find another job, like an opening for a manager of a restaurant? And he said, oh no, she'll just start busing, and she'll be, I'll tell you, within 6 months, she'll be running the place. So just kind of that confidence that, like, yeah, you can work harder, you can bring it, and you can
actually
rise.
Yeah, actually, I had a similar experience where, when I came to work at Code Academy, I was somewhat of a minor celebrity because I had invented this technology, and I was known in that like subfield of tech. But then when I went to work at Facebook, I was a total unknown, and I had to like reset, and also rose at Facebook to become a team lead and starting my own team and building tools that millions of people use. I didn't work on the main site. I worked on tools. I love building tools for people. Worked on open source tools at Facebook, and just like I was so nervous that I built up a lot of social capital, and I left it. And they started over, and you could do that over and over again in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My grandmother used to say when I was working at Dole Food Company, and no one ever expected me to be working at a food company. And, my grandmother, who died at 99, would say, oh, it's early days. And this is when I'm in my 40s. It's early days for Jennifer. I'm like, okay. All right, well, let's get to some of these questions, because a lot of people are curious about the thread and about your experience. We've got a question coming in on Instagram. Gwynlyn Pirro asked, does the US have more or less opportunities now than when you arrived? Which I guess we could also just use that question to say, how in the past 10 years things gotten better, these things that you remarked on?
I would say yes. My point of view is always entrepreneurship. Right. One, because I'm an entrepreneur, and because I think this is the lifeblood of this country is entrepreneurship. And in the United States, entrepreneurship is not just for the capitalist class. You, as a worker, you're also an entrepreneur because of the concept of at-will employment. You're sort of responsible for your own progression. If you don't like a place, you can take a risk and go somewhere else. There's this freedom, this dynamism of movement, and that's only got better. There's this concept of the Great Resignation. Partly because a lot of people are starting their own businesses. Starting your business has become so easy. When we started our business, you just fill an online form and you have an LLC, and everything's automated. There are things that like help you with taxes. There are services that help you with payroll. All this infrastructure is getting built up, and that's not just like completely virtual or software businesses. Even with things like Square, like brick and mortar businesses can run like software businesses. You get all this intelligence and all this software, and to help you kind of run your business. So I think thanks, in a big part to the software industry and tech, you see the bar lowering for entrepreneurship. So the entry is getting lower, and you see it in the numbers. Like the number of firms started, especially in 2020, has risen a lot, and I think that's really great news. People moving is a good thing as well. Like I think what made America so great is that people could vote with their feet. Oh, the East Coast is getting calcified. It's getting like a little bit old money, and people are comfortable. Like, let's go west, and now, at least for my friend network, they're going back east. They're going back to Miami, right? Miami is becoming the hot tech center because San Francisco is growing up. And now San Francisco politicians are waking up. They're like, we're losing all these talent and all these people.
Let's hope so. I recently wrote an article called "Vagrants in Our Driveway: A Teachable Moment," and that I was saying the way we talk about homelessness, which is clearly a huge problem in San Francisco, that the very term, that words matter, and using that term makes it you think that it's a housing problem, and that that people are so successful and successful entrepreneurs are coming here and they're they're buying up all of the real estate and driving costs up. And I said, well, if you think that homelessness is a problem now, wait until they leave. Then you're really going to have
I think that's one of the negative trends. The sort of the treadmill of political correctness. Like even homelessness is sort of now considered maybe a little bit impolite, and like there's a new term,
unhoused, right?
Unhoused. And I agree with you. These language games, like they're not helping anyone. Like, like what are you doing? Like you're just inventing new terms. Like how is this useful? And it comes from a good place. And I think Americans tend to want to be polite,
nice.
And nice, especially Californians. But I like it's a distraction. It's literally a distraction. Like, there are like we should be focusing on real solutions.
Right. And A is A. You have to call things what they are,
right.
To correctly recognize the reality of a situation. And if the problem is that you have somebody who's deeply in the clutches of an addiction, that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with somebody who's a drug addict, not somebody who's just simply unhoused. So, all right. Another question also from Instagram, Anthony Slater saying, so many people think you have to go to college in order to get in the door. Replit seems to work differently. How can programmers stand out to get in without a degree?
Yeah, you can totally do that. We hire a lot of young people. Our youngest employee joined when he was 15.
Wow.
Now he's 17. Yeah. And I talked about being open to weirdos in the thread.
Yeah.
And that's especially clear in the tech industry where you can have a totally unconventional life path, and you can be missing some skills, like when Elon Musk came out as like having Asperger's syndrome or something like that. There's a lot of people in tech that might be missing some social skills or something like that, and they still are able to make it, and they're still able to contribute, and they're still able to build value in the world. And you have people on the other extreme, like complete extroverts, the marketing types, the sales types, and those two groups are able to coexist in a lot of ways. and just like the American history of weirdness, like I remember reading about Jimi Hendrix, like did not know how to read music and was playing the guitar upside down because he was left-handed. It's like, where else does that happen? Like, I don't think there's anywhere else where you literally can be self-taught, autodidact, and do things totally different than what other people's do. And as long as you're contributing, as long as you're creating value and you're bringing something new and interesting, then you're going to find a place for yourself. And so that's very uniquely American. In terms of the question of college, I think that's right. Like you can totally skip college. Like I take a softer sort of stance on education than a lot of my friends in tech and people in the libertarian community and things like that. Like I think I think college can be good for some people. Like I think just the idea of having 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it is, to like completely explore what you're interested in could be a good thing. I think committing too early in life to a certain path might not be the best always. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the benefits of college are these like non-academic benefits of meeting people and all of that. There are also downsides, like they're becoming an ideological echo chamber in a lot of ways, and you could like learn bad things from college. And so if you don't have the money for it, if you don't have the aptitude for it, if you feel like you can work and go and do something in the world, then the first thing you do is like prove yourself. So websites like Replit and GitHub and others in the programmer space allow you to build a portfolio online and show potential employers that you're actually good at your craft, or you can start your own business.
All right, we have a question on YouTube. Ali Ira Hahle, shout out to Amjad. I had the chance to work with this brilliant mind. I'm not sure if Amjad had the chance to read Atlas Shrugged or what his take on objectivism is.
Yeah, we were talking about that before the show. I'm sort of like not a big like fiction reader. I'm like always in a rush to get to the point, to the meat of the things, and kind of Atlas Shrugged is beautifully written, but it's like long and all of that. I got the like so I played it on audio at 3x speed. And so I got all the way through, and I'm in agreement with a lot of the in agreement with a lot of Ayn Rand's ideas, and what we talked about in terms of against victimhood, more about self-reliance, that being incentivized to do what's well for you and your family actually end up adding up to being very good for society. I am in agreement on all these things, and capitalism being a natural, most freedom maximizing system. I think maybe where I don't know if that's Ayn Rand's stand, but like maybe I think sometimes you have to fight and not just leave. Like, the idea of like John Galt and those mm-hmm. people kind of leaving is an interesting idea. And you see it a lot in the like tech libertarian circles, kind of like Peter Thiel, who is an investor in Replit.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he was our honoree at our gala last year.
That's awesome.
Good.
I'll
have to send them this interview.
Yeah, please do. Building things like seasteading, and maybe it's worth exploring these things. But ultimately, like I really think that America is, as I said in the thread, is worth protecting, and like the message should not be that we should like leave.
Right. So, which feeds into a question from Harold Rogers asking over Facebook. Speaking of leaving, what are your thoughts on all the people leaving California? All your friends going to Miami and Austin, and would you go elsewhere or stay and try to change things?
Yeah, I'm so far decided to stay, and um, like I'm not as involved as I'd like to be in local politics, but this is something that I'd love to explore. Been having some conversations, things like my thread, hopefully, and like my writing, hopefully will start to have some positive impact. Actually, some politicians reached out, Democrats, center left type people reached out after the news came out and wanted to chat here in Santa Clara County. And so there are a lot of good apples here, and I think we have a fighting chance. Again, the attitudes are changing a little bit. You see, London Breed had a tough on crime speech, and hopefully that has some staying power. But I am very sympathetic to interstate competition, or not sympathetic, but very supportive of voting with your feet, of the American tradition of interstate competition. The mayor of Miami saying if California, San Francisco doesn't like the tech entrepreneur class, then come here, and a lot of other mayors have said the same thing. Recently, the mayor of New York has been signaling a lot of support for crypto and Bitcoin. He said he's going to take his salary. I think Eric Adams said he's going to take his salary in Bitcoin. And this is great. This is awesome. Politicians fighting for talent is awesome. I just don't think we should we should be so down on America itself. I think the interstate stuff is fine, but not be thinking about escapism too much.
So we have a little less than 10 minutes, and you were mentioning, and it's one of the items in the thread about how America is open to weirdness. Weirdos thrive without being crushed. So, weirdness is being different, thinking differently, doing things differently. I wonder if there is the same kind of toleration for, quirky personal styles, personal tastes. Is there a same tolerance for kind of non-conformists when it comes in Silicon Valley, when it comes to those who have different, political points of view? I mentioned Peter Thiel, who was someone who we honored at our gala. One of the reasons he left, Silicon Valley was because of the sort of political monoculture, that there wasn't a lot of diversity or tolerance for diversity of ideologies. Palmer Luckey also spoke at our gala, and he's founded Oculus, but just supported a different candidate, and the guy got kicked out of his own company. So
yeah, I think
so I mean, maybe is that premise even right?
No, it is somewhat right. I think it's especially FANG sort of phenomena, Facebook, Google employees. There are a few reasons for that. I think Google started this trend of treating employees like children.
Wow, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I mean, you go to the campus, it's all colorful. It's all they have these
like a playground.
They feed them, they do their laundry, they do their all this. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it looks great from the outside, but it had a lot of these negative downstream effect of actually people becoming children. And I think that is changing a little bit, especially with the pandemic. And I think because they had so much success and they were insulated from market pressure, because as a monopoly with a cash cow, you sort of become totally, and this is some failure modes of capitalism that maybe I depart from some libertarians from, is that you can have situations where companies become so corrupt because they've been too successful for too long. And so ideological conformity became part of that. And I saw it really peak during the Trump Clinton sort of elections, and it drove people really mad that Trump won. I wasn't happy about it, but I think some people just really fundamentally had were affected mentally by it, and there was a ramp up in terms of wokeness for a long time in Silicon Valley, and it kind of peaked in 2020, and I feel like it's going down, and I think there's opening now for reasonable people to talk, to have nuance, to realize that we're all striving for the same thing. And a lot of people that adopted those mentalities, have different approach to maybe solving things, but they want to do well. And I believe in the goodness of most people, but shutting down debate, canceling people, taking things out of context, digging into people's history to find things they don't like, supporting a different candidate, being against that, or shutting that down. I think that's bad, and people know that's bad, but there was a moment of mania, I think, in Silicon Valley specifically, but the United States in general, sort of peaked in 2020, maybe a bit last year. But don't you feel like things are changing a little bit?
I think so, but I think that we're still seeing, just in terms of irrationality, I'm still seeing a lot of irrationality, unwillingness to admit things didn't turn out the way that they were intended to, with a lot of the mandates and the lockdowns. I mean, the United States is really kind of an outlier. And you look over in Europe and other countries where they're just not persisting in a lot of these interventions. And so it almost seems like, until we can kind of, because it's a big deal. It's kind of a big deal. So.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's slightly distinct than the ideological thing, because you see people on the left and right sort of being so tied to lockdowns and mandates and things like that, despite the data, despite we know so much now about this disease and who it affects and what it affects, and you see some of the policies that are getting pursued really be anti-American, anti-freedom, anti a lot of things that made this country special. And yeah, I don't think anyone, I mentioned that in my thread. I say it's a cliche, but freedom is very important for me, and why I'm here. Being forced to take medicine against your will is probably one of the worst things you could be doing. And just to be measured, here in the peninsula, in the Bay Area, we don't have vaccine passports. We people are outside. If they have a mask, they're not going to bully you to put a mask on. There are places where those irrationalities still exist, but just to be measured, there are a lot of places that are not like that, including Texas, Miami, and places in California that are cool.
Well, I need, I haven't gotten my booster of the vaccine, but I feel like I've gotten my booster of optimism and gratitude, because I can get, guilty as anybody else, I can get wrapped up in the negativity. And so this is a good course corrective. Amjad, thank you so much for joining us. Check out those books that I mentioned, and,
Will do.
if
Will
we can
do.
get a address for you, we'll send you a care package. One of the things that we do at the Atlas Society is we do pocket guides. So we make things, we're also about making things accessible and fun.
Mhm.
So thank you very much,
course.
and hope to get to meet you on one of my next trips up to the Valley.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'd love that. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited to dig more into Ayn Rand's books and your community.
Great. And I want to thank everybody who joined us today. Thank you for all of the wonderful questions. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. Check out the events section of our site. Tomorrow I'm on Clubhouse with our founder, David Kelly, talking about fact versus opinion and objectivity. And then next week, I am going to be speaking with the author of The Gray Lady Wait, Ashley Rinsberg, who has documented some ways in which historically the newspaper that we usually take to be objective, that some of the bias or the misreporting or the fake news, if you will, is not necessarily a new phenomenon. So that'll be a fun conversation. So thanks, everyone. Thank you, Amjad.